Good morning. My name is Valerie Bayless, and I am a member of this congregation and your worship associate today. On behalf of Reverend Dave Dunn, our service leader and intern minister, Liz Martin, Director of Religious Exploration, Lexi T. Brown, our music director, Alex Peach, the greeters and technical team that are making today's live stream possible, I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North congregation, which we lovingly call UUMAN. UUMAN is a liberal faith community with a mission to nurture our spirit, strive for justice, and transform the world. No matter whom you are, whom you love, or where you are on your spiritual journey, all are welcome here. Welcome to everyone that's joining us remotely. For any visitors that are with us for the first time, and if you're willing to do so, could you please stand and tell us your name and where you're from so we can get to know you better? Are there any first-time visitors on this side? Good morning.
My name is Mike Palma. I'm from Arizona, and I'm Richard's brother.
Good morning, Mike. Any other first-time visitors? Good morning. Good morning, Raji. Good morning. Any first-time visitors on this side? All right, thank you. We joyfully welcome children and families in worship. The sounds of children are part of a living congregation. For busy hands of all ages, there's a fidget corner in the back of the sanctuary. And nursery care for babies and toddlers is available and over there and opens before the service begins. After the Wandering Time story, our children will be sung out to Children's Chapel in Fellowship Hall. Couple announcements. Are you new to UUMAN or just want to learn more about UU principles and values? Then please attend the UU 102 session today during second hour in Fellowship Hall, Room 2. See Jesse Diaz for details. And our weekly services are growing, as you may have noticed. We'd like to make sure that we have room for everyone, so we'd like to ask that when you start coming in, if everyone can try to make sure that you're sitting kind of on this side or in the middle or on this side, to make sure that we have room for new people or latecomers who come after the service starts. If you have room where you're sitting and you're able to scooch over one or two seats, we'd like to ask you to do so, just if you can. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, let us greet one another with the hand or elbow of friendship.
Mystery, mystery, like I will always maintain that we could just listen to them for the whole service and get enough preaching right there. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Alex. Our call to worship today is by Esther Hurlbut. It is not always easy to find love at the center. There is no set of easy instructions numbered 1 through 7 or maybe 8. It is not always easy to find love at the center, but today in Covenant, we celebrate our living tradition, which invites us to take deep breaths of fresh air into the newness of every day, so our minds, our hearts, and our spirits will be continually nourished. It's not always easy to find love at the center. So for today, in this space, we gather in covenant to celebrate the reality that love is at the core of our beings, and that love will guide us if we open ourselves to the challenges that love requires of us. May we accept this challenge with dignity and grace. Now we will light our chalice together.
We arrive from many different experiences and backgrounds. Some of us have trouble speaking. Others are so young, they're still learning to talk. Some of us speak English as a second language, and others of us can speak several foreign languages. All of us share this in common. We speak the language of love. In the moments before worship begins, and again when we return to the service of life, we greet one another with kind words. We chat about the days behind us and the days to come, and we speak the language of love. We lift our voices in song, not to sing perfectly or in tune, but to hear and feel our voices form a life-giving sound, and we speak the language of love. We form a web of compassionate listening when individuals among us, embodying vulnerability, name the fears that grip their hearts and the joys that buoy their spirits. We speak the language of love. At times, our voices clash. We disagree. Tension enters our voices as we make room for different beliefs, different opinions, different perspectives. Through it all, it's our intention that we speak the language of love. In this congregation, we welcome a multiplicity of truths and invite them to be named out loud. We prophesy, summoning the age when justice and peace will be evident all around us, and we speak the language of love. Let us worship together, making room for one another as whole beings, tender hearts, hungry spirits, and curious minds. With our actions and with our words, let us speak the language of love. Please, as you are able, stand and join us in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit, from the hardback hymnal.
Flame.
Children, young and old, are invited to the front for our Time for All Ages. After the story, children are invited to exit into Fellowship Hall for Children's Chapel for the remainder of service. If this is your child's first time attending Children's Chapel, please walk with them to Fellowship Hall. After service, please escort your children to their appropriate RE classroom in Discovery Cottage for second hour.
Good morning. My name is Martina Austin, and I'm a member of this congregation. I'm going to go. I was supposed to read a book about a bear, and I decided not to. A couple weeks ago when I was here, Lexi and Rollin were introducing their stuffed animal buddies, and I have a new stuffed animal buddy that I want to introduce to you. So, this little guy, his name is Kirtek, and he is from very, very far away. Can you tell what he is? A mole, exactly. He's a mole. And Kirtek is from the Czech Republic, and he has been a very beloved children's character there since 1960. And his creator also created shows about him. And if you go on YouTube and type in Little Mole, his shows come up. They're between like 5 minutes and a half hour. Well, Kirtek is an immigrant to our country because he moved here. So we're trying to get to know him. He's hanging out at my grandson's house with Curious George, the Easter Bunny, and a Christmas elf in my grandson's crib. So he's getting to know them a little bit and our customs. And my grandson and I are watching the Kirtek shows on YouTube, which are not in Czech. They are no language. The creator wanted them to be international. So the characters, mainly him, and the other creatures that are in there are animals, and they do things like, wee, instead of speaking, so that they can be understood by everybody. So this is our new little friend, and it just reminds me we all have creatures, stuffed animals, but also friends from places everywhere all over the world. And we treasure them, and we care for them, and we try to get to know them so that we can understand them better, and grow to love them the same way they feel about us. And that's it. That's very short today. That's it.
At this point in our service, we share our each other to magnify them and our sorrows to divide the weight of their pain. If you're so moved, please feel free to come up, state your name, and drop a pebble in the bowl along with letting us know your joy or sorrow. If you're attending via live stream, feel free to drop your joy or sorrow into the chat.
Hi, I'm Mark Peterson. I'm a member of this congregation. I have a quick story to tell. August 14th of 2006, Greg Wagner said, "Hey, I need you to meet my cousin. She's coming down here." I was down in Atlanta. I was in the Navy at the time. And I said, "I need to stay for another night." And he said, "You absolutely should." And that night I went out on a date with Miss Christie. And we have been partners in crime since that. It's been 20 years, and she's been my person ever since. We got... And for those who don't know, I spent 26 years in the Navy, and I did 3 deployments on the Abraham Lincoln. And if you've watched the news, the Abraham Lincoln is currently on a long deployment now. And I was in 2002 and 2003 in the first operation into Iraq. So I feel for those folks and what they're going through right now. And it absolutely should not happen. That's a total failure in leadership, and it should not be taking place. So if you can, write your congressman and make a call to your senators. And I'm sure Senator Ossoff is all over it, but please make the call and make your hopes, your anger known, and let them do something about it.
Terry Talton, I'm a member of this congregation. I have a brief good one. I have, after a lot of study, passed my ham radio technician exam, so if you're on ham radio, hit me up.
I'm Miriam Patanian and a member of this congregation, and just a pebble of joy for a friend who's celebrating a birthday tomorrow, Kelly Callan.
Hi, I'm Doug Wilson, a very long-term pal of the congregation. This coming Saturday, I will be celebrating the 45th anniversary with a beautiful, wonderful woman. Same one. So that's exciting.
Hi, my name is Maria Costa. I'm, I guess, a friend of the congregation, and I'm also an immigration attorney, and I work with unaccompanied kids. And a few weeks ago, the funding that supported my program ended, and now that contract has been given to an organization whose former CEO and founder was accused of trafficking. So that's for the children in federal custody, or the organization in charge of those kids. So this is a pebble of sorrow for that, and my colleagues across the country who are trained in this work. Thank you all.
My name is Robin Day. I'm a member of this congregation, and I have a small joy. I teach English as a second language at NFCC, and one of my students this week asked me to give her private lessons, and I was just very honored and happy. Thank you.
My name is Bob Pop. I'm a member of this congregation. I don't know how many of you know, but last weekend we were not able to live stream. Believe it or not, this church, our congregation, took a lightning hit. Who's to guess, you know? And wiped out a bunch of equipment. Not sure if this is joy or sorrow, but a whole bunch of people came together this week, and we're live today because of them. Our office manager, our special projects trustee, and some of the folks from the live stream team, including Bruce Likeston, who got it up and running this morning. So I want to thank them for all the work they did.
My name is Miguel. I'm a member of the live stream team, and we have a joy from the chat from Steve Allerton, who says, "My first cataract surgery seems to have gone well."
I'm going to put on a different hat for just a moment. I'm Liz, your intern minister, and last week I shared how excited I was that I was launching into the new school year with an important interfaith program that we do called WISE, Welcoming Interfaith and Spiritual Exploration. And today is the last day of training the upperclassmen who will accompany the first years who arrive tomorrow on campus. And over a 5-day period, we will take them to 2 different Christian churches, including Ebenezer Baptist. We will take them to a Hindu mandir, a Muslim masjid, a a Sikh gurdwara, a synagogue. Who am I leaving out? Anyway, we're going to take them all over Atlanta to have these experiences, and it's one of the most humbling and amazing things I get to do in my job is to watch students encounter these other traditions and other cultures and learn about how we are the same and how we are different. So I'm so excited. And I always, every year it gets better, and I just don't know how that's like logically possible, but yeah. So a big joy for that. And that peer mentor training that ends today means that as soon as my sermon is over, I am getting in a car and meeting a busload of people at the Etowah Mounds up in Cartersville. And I just want you to know right now that if my phone starts blowing up while I'm preaching because like the food hasn't arrived or the bus hasn't arrived, that's why I look weird. So just a warning. Anyway, joys, all of them.
Yes.
And I'll drop one final pebble for those joys and sorrows that are still too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. Let's keep one another in our thoughts for this week.
Wow. So you may have seen that my topic today is adventures and apologies in Vietnam. And I think before talking to you about that, I need to give you a little bit of context about me and why I would be speaking about Vietnam. On the scale of experienced world traveler and never left one's hometown, I'm over here. I am not a traveler. Partly it was economics and class and upbringing, and so I've only used my passport as of right now 3 times to fly out of this country. So I think that's an important piece to know about me, that talking about travel, it just sounds completely surreal to be coming out. So already you've got this person who's going to have this immense experience because it's so new. And how I found myself in Vietnam this May is, as I mentioned, I work in the Office of Spiritual and Religious Life at Emory University, and we have some what we call signature interfaith programs. And 2 of the 3 of them I've been working with for 6 years. The third one is one that I hadn't had any experience with. It's called our Journeys of Reconciliation. And it's been going on since 1986. And it's an interfaith group of students from across the university who travel with some faculty and staff advisors to a place that has experienced deep conflict and has been working on overcoming that conflict, reconciling. That's why it's Journeys of Reconciliation. So this, let's see, it was in April, about 3.5 weeks. So this group of students who were selected from a pool of over 80 applicants, 12 of them were accepted, and 4 people were chosen to accompany them. One was a Vietnamese alum of the school, one was the dean of our office, one was a Buddhist professor, and one was our Buddhist chaplain. About 3.5 weeks out, they discovered that our Buddhist chaplain would not be able to get his visa to go to Vietnam. They weren't going to let him come. But everyone from the United States had no problem. He is not from the United States. Everyone from the United States had no problem getting a visa. So they said, we need one more leader. Would you be willing to come? Which, how could I say no to that? I get to travel around the world for free, well, at least mostly, and do the kind of work that feeds my soul, that I love doing. I, of course, jumped at the chance. But in order to prepare, this group had been meeting for 8 months, learning about different aspects of the Vietnamese conflict and what has happened since the war, and just generally about the culture and what to expect. So I asked them for a reading list and some suggestions so that I could try to catch up a little bit. So for the next 3 weeks, I took in as much of that as I could, including watching all 18 hours of the Ken Burns documentary on the Vietnam War. Shout out to my spouse for doing that with me. I was born in 1971, so the Vietnam War is not something I remember firsthand, but it's something that definitely colored the world I grew up in ways ranging from, pop culture, movies, to having neighbors who were returned veterans. So after this crash course of mostly studying the war, I was scared. I didn't know what it was going to be like to walk into this country, being me, an American, a walking reminder of the harm and poor decisions that were made on their land and to their people. Well, I was about to find out. Our visit began in Saigon / Ho Chi Minh City, and the overall trip, while it is about reconciliation, it is a mixture of different visits. So we did some visits that were very touristy. We did some visits that were historical and political. We did some visits that were interfaith. We visited the only mosque in North Vietnam. So it was interfaith. It was a big blend. And sometimes that resulted, and our days were very packed. very packed. It was a 10-day trip, and we were in 4 different cities. So it was packed, it was quick, there were a lot of different elements, and it kind of resulted in some, what I would think of as emotional whiplash, that made it really hard in the moment to process what I was seeing. And part of that is likely due to the newness of travel in Asia for me, for instance. I didn't understand how people could cross the street. It's a whole thing. But it was also very, very hot. It turns out May is right before the rainy season starts, and people don't travel a lot there this time of year because it is so hot. But anyway, we started our first day in a really rather gentle way. We took a boat and went out into the Mekong Delta and visited different farms. We got to see a cacao farm and an orchid farm, and we got to meet some people who live very close to the land, and learn a lot about how they are doing their best to preserve their environment. And then we got on our bus and went back to Saigon and went straight to the Thich Quang Duc Monument, which is he is the monk who set himself on fire in a busy intersection in Saigon to draw attention to the fact that the Southern Catholic government was persecuting Buddhists. I did not know about this before my crash course, and it turns out that this act really started to turn the tide in the United States about, are we really supporting the right side if they're persecuting other religions within their country? I think it really may have kicked off questioning for people. The next day, which was all in Saigon, provided another sharp contrast, but in a completely different way. We started our morning at the US consulate, which is the site of the US embassy during the war. There's lots of footage and imagery of people when they finally pulled out of Vietnam, leaving from helicopters at the embassy. And we met with the deputy consul and a political officer who is like most involved with the government there, and a historian, a post-historian. And they told us a lot of very interesting things, but the thing that blew me away that they told us was that the approval rating of the United States in Vietnam is 80%. 80% approval rating of the United States. That's higher than it is in the United States. It blew my mind, and it kind of turned all of my thinking upside down. I thought that people were going to be looking at me with hatred when I walked into this place, and as it turns out, it was quite the opposite. After that visit to the consulate, we had lunch in a lovely open-air market, and then we went to another very important tourist site called the War Remnants Museum. It was housed in a building formerly used by the United States when we were there, dedicated to intelligence work, shall we say. And it used to be called the Exhibition House for U.S. and Puppet Government Crimes. This place was among the saddest places I've ever been, because there were whole wings dedicated to the effects of Agent Orange on people who lived in Vietnam. It was hard. It was hard to see and read and know that all of these people have suffered for generations now, because this has passed along genetically, some of these issues, on behalf of our government. was also something else I noticed there, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the sermon. But both of those visits really got me thinking about narratives. What stories we tell ourselves and tell each other, whose stories get told, whose stories get left out. It kind of became this almost mantra for me for the rest of the trip. And I kept asking myself this at Ho Chi Minh's tomb on his birthday, which was a serious adventure that we'll have to talk about another day, to visiting Hindu ruins from the 4th century, to sailing Ha Long Bay. When I think about narratives, there's a TED Talk that has stuck with me for the last 17 years since I saw it. It's called The Danger of a Single Story. And if you haven't heard that TED Talk, I suggest you check it out. It really opened my eyes to the need for different voices and different stories. Now back to that War Remnants Museum. One of the things that I noticed is that it referred to the South Vietnamese government, since honestly, I didn't understand before this that there was a civil war going on that we entered into on the side of the ones that were fighting communism, and that the North were fighting for communism, and I don't know why I didn't understand that before. At any rate, everything in that museum was told from the perspective of the North. So the Southerners were just referred to as puppets. And there were whole walls outlining how much money, how many troops, how much equipment, how many bombs had been sent by the United States to Vietnam. But there were no walls listing out all of the money and the military equipment and the bombs sent by China and Russia to the North. There was really only one side of this story being told. And then later in the trip, we went to Hoa Lo Prison, which you might have heard of because it was called the Hanoi Hilton, where many American POWs were kept in Hanoi. That story of American POWs being held there and mistreated was the single story I had heard about this place. So when I went to the museum, I couldn't figure out what was going on because it started by telling the story of its building in about 1900 by the French. And as we went through this prison, we got to see rooms with mannequins, and those mannequins were most obviously Vietnamese people. We got to see how the French had used this to try to, to imprison and to scare the Vietnamese. It took up that story throughout the museum. By the time, I almost wondered if they were ever going to talk about the American POWs, right? I thought, okay, so we're just getting one side of this story. But then there was a whole room dedicated to the American POWs. Now, the pictures of the POWs made it look like they were having lovely turkey Thanksgiving dinners and playing chess together. But then the next wall was all about POWs coming back and trying to make reconciliation with their captors. There were pictures of John Kerry, there were pictures of John McCain, and many others who had returned to the site in order to try to make things better. But you know what wasn't mentioned at all in that prison was the fact that it was continued to be used after the war with America to detain critics of the communist regime up until 1993. Now, in our reflection sessions, I found myself struggling with the fact that, I'm an English major, and of course I'm obsessed with narratives, right? I was concerned because I didn't feel like I was thinking enough about reconciliation, the named, reason for this trip. But then I thought about reconciliation, And I mean, if we're going to look at reconciliation, the first thing we probably need to look at is the conflict that needs to be resolved or reconciled. And how do we know about that conflict, and what do we know about that conflict? It comes from narratives. It comes from stories. And in thinking about this, I realized something. I had come to Vietnam with a narrative that centered me and my country. The Vietnam War created a lot of wounds for our country, some of which are still being reconciled here. It was a huge blemish and scar on our image in the world. I wasn't centering the narratives of the people who lived in Vietnam. Because when we were there, yes, literally everyone we encountered had no ill will towards the United States. They seemed to feel that reconciliation with our country had already happened, and that it had been completed in the 1990s when we restored and normalized economic relations with their country. Now, that's not to say that we are not still working for reconciliation on some of the environmental damage that was done to their country by Agent Orange, because that work is ongoing and very expensive and very slow. And of course, when we think about reconciliation and we're talking about countries on opposite sides of the world, you know, that's huge and feels so out of my control, out of any single person's control. And we did hear from that political officer at the consulate about the delicacy of balancing the human rights violations under an authoritarian communist government and the agenda of the United States, and trying to maintain some sort of connection and not have that be severed. Which led me to thinking about the two sides of the Civil War. Is it possible within Vietnam to examine the untold narrative truths about their conflict while living under one side's controlling a regime that insists that now, finally, this country is unified? We heard some stories from people, like our alum that was on the trip telling us about how here in the United States, most other Vietnamese immigrants think that she's going to be mean and scary because she has a northern accent. And that, to them, represents the communists who put their beloveds in South Vietnam in re-education camps. I talked to our tour guide who spent the whole 10 days with us, and I watched his face when we were in central Vietnam, listening to a woman talking about how we were on her estate that had been in her family for 22 generations, and was talking about how they were persecuted by both the North and the South. I wondered, and his family I knew had been displaced by the war. I wondered about how he and she would see each other and how their ancestors may have treated one another. Does any of this feel a little bit familiar? And I think that's the thing about this trip for me. I could give 20 sermons about this trip, at least, because we had so many adventures and it just sparked so many interesting observations for me. But I think maybe the one that's most important to me right now is the fact that every hard thing I saw in Vietnam, I also see here. Economic injustice, authoritarian regimes, all kinds of racism. I mean, it just legacies of conflict that feel too huge to reconcile. And I think maybe that's the gift of this kind of trip, or really any encounter that we have with people and places that are foreign to us. Seeing the ultimate sameness of the human struggle in the middle of all of our differences. And then feeling inspired to take a step back, look at ourselves and our surroundings with fresh eyes. And maybe, just maybe, going back to that first step towards reconciliation and examining the narratives that we have received. And speaking of narratives and listening, probably the most impactful part of the entire trip for me was a trip to Thich Nhat Hanh's Root Monastery. Some of you were in the class last week with Reverend Dave where we talked a little bit about Thich Nhat Hanh. He is probably the most influential Buddhist monk of the last century, besides the Dalai Lama. He met with Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. nominated him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And he is seen as the father of engaged Buddhism and mindfulness. And he was exiled from Vietnam by the southern Vietnamese government because they said that his calls for peace were communist. And then when the communists took over, they exiled him because he was Buddhist, and they were cracking down on religious observance. So he lived in exile for almost all of his life, living mostly in France, spent some time in the United States, etc. But he's written a ton of books. Can't recommend them more. And he even went on Oprah, which is kind of fun to watch for those of us of a certain age. But one of his core tenets is about deep listening. Deep listening, the intention of deep listening is to restore communication, according to Thich Nhat Hanh. Because once communication is restored, everything is possible, including peace and reconciliation. Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of another person. You can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose, to help him or her empty their heart. Even if they say things that are full of wrong perceptions, full of bitterness, you are still capable of continuing to listen with compassion. Because you know that listening like that, you give that person a chance to suffer less. And that is the first step towards peace. If the first step towards reconciliation is seeking out the unheard narratives, then the next step is certainly what he proposes, listening to them. And to truly work for the change that Thich Nhat Hanh prescribes, deep listening, compassionate listening, loving space. May we strive to be those kinds of people.
In an effort to fulfill and further the vision and mission of this congregation, we ask that our members share of their time, treasure, and talents. With this, we will now take the offering. You may also use the Give Now option in the Breeze app or web browser. This month's 50/50 recipient is Stella Love, whose mission is to care for children, low-income families, single-parent households, and unhoused individuals who need help. Any check specifically designated as 50/50 or any Breeze donations specifying Give to 50 this month will go to support their work.
we accept this sacred offering generously given by our members and friends. May it be used wisely and judiciously in service of our mission. Thank you.
And now, please rise as you're able and join us in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us, from the hardback hymnal. Let us extinguish our chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we are together again.
May the love that overcomes all differences, that heals all wounds, that puts flight to all fears, that reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Go in peace, my friends, and enjoy your week.